Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special webcast brought to you by the Conference Board in partnership with Carver, Edison, a financial technology company committed to improving participation in the employee stock purchase plan. I'm Amy Yee, researcher here at the Conference Board, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's program, Reimagining Compensation in a Changing World. Specifically, we'll focus on employee stock purchase plan today. So we will be discussing a few questions and issues in today's webcast. Many of you might be curious to know what Carver Edison's concept is when it comes to improving ESPP participation and how the company got started. So there's actually a very interesting and inspiring story behind it. So in a few minutes, our speaker will share with us the genesis of the company and how he and his colleagues turned this brilliant idea into reality. We're also 8 months into the pandemic, and everyone knows that COVID-19 has changed our life completely in many different aspects. Individuals and business across the entire world have faced both personal and financial impacts. So as business and employee priorities start to evolve, we've seen that a lot of organizations are facing new talent challenges. One of the most important and common challenges is how organizations can continue delivering on their employee value propositions to keep attracting, retaining, and engaging their talent, especially when it comes to leveraging compensation, and how can organizations communicate compensation to their employees effectively. So we will spend some time discussing some of these challenges later today, and of course, we'll also talk about what actions organizations can take to address or mitigate some of these challenges. So before we address these questions, I want to go over a few details about how you as an audience can best participate in today's program. So first, I encourage everyone to actively engage our discussion. So you can type your questions and comments in the chat box. We will save some time at the end of the webcast for our speaker to address your questions. And the slides from today are also available for you to download. There will be a very short brief evaluation at the end of today's webcast, and we would appreciate your feedback and telling us how we could improve going forward. And the webcast will also be made available on demand on the Conference Board site shortly after today's live session. And please feel free to share the link with your colleagues and friends who might be interested in this topic. Please also note that this webcast is approved for HRCI, SHRM, and CPE credits. So if you haven't done so already, you can click the link in the CEU request pod to sign up for available credits for this event. So the pod is located in the bottom right corner of the webcast console. Please note that the CEU credits are only available for those of you who attend the entire live show. And please don't forget to respond to the 3 pop-ups that will appear throughout the program. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today. So joining me today is Aaron Shapiro, founder and CEO of Carver Edison. Prior to founding Carver Edison, Aaron was hired as the first investment professional at Edge Hill Endowment Partners, a Connecticut-based institutional investment firm that focuses exclusively on investing the endowments of nonprofit organizations. And during Aaron's tenure, the company's assets grew from $150 million to over $4 billion. And Aaron graduated from Babson College with a concentration in finance and holds the FINRA Series 7 license. He's also a self-taught full-stack fintech programmer. Welcome, Aaron. I'm so glad to have you today. And looking forward to hearing your stories, and thank you in advance for sharing your suggestions, insights, and recommendations with our audience today on this very important and also timely topic.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. With that, I'd like to hand it over to you to talk about your company.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining. My name is Aaron. I'm the founder of Carver Edison. And Carver Edison comes with a lot of history. We specialize in helping publicly traded companies drive participation in company-sponsored stock plans. Now, the employee stock purchase plan is really America's first modern financial wellness benefit. They were written into law in 1964, 14 years before the 401k came into existence, as part of Johnson's War on Poverty. Now let's rewind the clock to 1964. In the 10 years leading up to 1964, the equity markets had returned about 10% every year, and there were massive civil rights issues going on in this country. That's not that much different than what's happening today. If we look back at the 10 years preceding 2020, the equity markets have returned about 10% a year. And of course, there are really powerful changes happening from a civil rights perspective in our country. So what happened is in 1964, a group of really talented CFOs got together with Congress, and they put together this crazy thing called an employee stock purchase plan for the first time to make it possible for America's working class to actually participate meaningfully in the equity markets. Now, at the time, the household income in the US was $6,000. And Congress said, as part of the law, that people could contribute up to $25,000 per year to buy company stock at a discount. Now, it's unclear how, in a world where the median household income is $6,000, someone might be able to contribute $25,000 to a company's stock plan, but it was designed to send a message about the powerful impact that stock ownership can have. So, and what's happened over the years is exactly that to some respects. The people who have been able to participate in company stock plans because they can afford it have generally done really well, especially as wealth has compounded over time. On the flip side, there have been a lot of people, in fact, 70% of the almost 30 million or so eligible employees for ESPPs today have had to sit on the sidelines simply because they can't afford the payroll deductions that are required as part of employee stock purchase plans. And for me, it's personal. One of those people was my mom. As Amy mentioned, I used to be in the institutional investing world, investing for nonprofits, endowments, and foundations. So I was running around the world looking at interesting investing opportunities. And it was my mom who sat me down one day and said, "Aaron, I need help making some more money. You're in the finance world. Can you help me?" And I started learning about employee stock purchase plans. And not only did I realize that employee stock purchase plans were the opportunity that anyone in the institutional investing world would kill to have access to, but also, if it was done right, employee stock purchase plans could actually remove the friction between employee compensation and management and shareholder interest. And it's one of the only places in not only the benefits world, but I'd say broader the compensation world, where there's complete alignment of interest between increasing compensation and delivering value to management teams and shareholders. But that's only the case if the gap can be bridged for all of the employees who have access to one of the most lucrative opportunities that exists anywhere in the financial markets and actually participate in their company stock plan. So that inspired what I call a crusade, and we've done it. We've set out on this mission, and we've built an entire award-winning company around this very simple yet powerful mission of making it possible for employees and public companies to build wealth together through further participation in employee stock purchase plans. We've built a world-class board. We've brought Cashless Participation, our core product, which we'll go through a little bit later, to life with some of the biggest names in the industry, including E-Trade and Global Shares, who combined have over $250 billion in stock plan assets on their platform. And in fact, we were lucky enough to be recognized on Fast Company magazine's list of world-changing ideas for our work with Cashless Participation in both the impact investing and corporate social responsibility category. And I think what you'll see as we continue to go through the session today is how both of those worlds come together, and especially for the purpose of this session, with everything happening in the world, the convergence between impact and corporate social responsibility is something really powerful when it comes to compensation and financial inclusion. So at a really high level, from a philosophy perspective, there are 4 tenets that guide everything we do. Number one, we always make sure that employees are always better off. Across market cycles, stock prices go up, down, they stay the same. An employee has to always be better off. Number two, executives have to get closer to reaching their performance targets, because at the end of the day, a lot of the performance targets that are set for executives are based on company health and performance. So we want to move management teams closer to the finish line on some of those performance targets. And we want to do it in a way that not only strengthens the balance sheet and some of the corporate finance metrics for the company, but aligns everyone's incentives, because now employees own more stock than ever. Management teams are closer to the finish line on their performance awards, and shareholders are generating positive returns on capital, specifically in tech, healthcare, and financial services, sometimes north of 20% return on equity. So it's a really unique philosophy that takes everyone's interest, every stakeholder in the process, employees, management teams, and shareholders, and brings everyone together for the first time. The world's changed a lot recently. I mean, as everyone on this call has, I'm sure, experienced in one way or another, the world's changing really quickly. And unfortunately, with that has come a lot of hard decisions. A lot of businesses, at least here in New York, where Carver Edison is based, have shut down. Many have announced public layoffs. My brother is a pilot. We all know it's been happening with the airlines. Most recently, United and American announced considerable layoffs. So now from a management perspective, the question is, what happens? In a world where the business future is uncertain, but there's still a constant need to attract and retain talent, what does that look like? What can be done to help manage the difficulty of being fiscally responsible, but also delivering compensation to attract and retain the best talent out there, to make sure that you and your company continue to push through a pretty difficult time? So again, as we think of it right now, there are at least 3 challenges that have popped up that we're seeing that companies are coming to us thinking about. Number one, how do we continue to attract and retain talent, but do it in a way that's fiscally disciplined? Number two, a lot of companies, particularly in consumer, the retail space, are thinking about how to offset salary cuts. Some of these salary cuts have been pretty considerable. Some of them are even permanent. There's the entire conversation about salary cuts for people that are moving as part of the remote work shift. And lastly, how do we keep our employees engaged with now distributed teams? Keeping everyone engaged is pretty important. So these are really the 3 things that we see a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about internally. And as we continue to go through today, you'll see how, at least from our perspective, we think about some of these challenges. So Deloitte every quarter puts out a great report on CFO sentiment and publishes what CFOs are thinking. There are four areas of focus for CFOs, at least from the last quarter report. Number one is cash reserves. Number two is reducing costs. Number three is what happens if COVID-related shutdowns continue. And number four is how do we maintain productivity as a company. So let's just go through these one by one. From a cash reserve perspective, what a lot of companies have done is they've actually added to their cash stockpile. in a world where debt is cheap, what a lot of companies have done is taken on more capital to help add to the balance sheet in case the world continues to operate a little bit slower than normal. At the same time, like we were just talking about, salary cuts have been a real thing. Reduced costs across the board have been something very real and very significant. And unfortunately, there are a lot of companies that have had to make hard decisions to reduce costs to make it to the other side. From the COVID-19 shutdown perspective, one of the things we've seen is increased flexibility in how companies are adapting and reacting to some of these shutdowns. And CFOs in particular are making sure that there's enough agility across the financial stack of the company to make sure that if shutdowns continue to happen, there's enough room to be flexible. And lastly, in terms of maintaining productivity, it's no surprise, but digital communication channels have become almost a lifeline for a lot of companies, and especially delivering communications in a personalized, localized way for global workforces has really become important. So with all that, how should you think about creating an action plan? Number one, where are the blind spots, where are the critical needs, and where are the opportunities? I think one of the things that we've seen, especially in our work with publicly traded companies, is there are a lot of opportunities that companies have actually been able to leverage despite everything happening in the world that have already delivered pretty considerable results for some of these companies. So as you think about putting your action plan together, look around the corners, think in creative ways, think outside the box, because yes, there are going to be blind spots and there are going to be really critical areas of need for the company, but there are also a lot of opportunities that you might be able to find if you just start thinking a little bit outside of the usual box, given what's happening in the world. Number two, I'd say collaborate with cross-functional stakeholders internally. It's really easy sometimes to get siloed based on department, but a lot of these opportunities across the board and even challenges, I think you can get to a lot quicker by collaborating across business units. Create a timetable. The world's moving quickly right now. Having a schedule and sticking to that schedule is really important, and also reevaluating that schedule if you're not able to get to things along the way. That can be really important. And lastly, once you have all that together, set a deadline for the decision makers. They're going to be pulled in a lot of directions. So make sure that you're setting hard and fast deadlines to make that happen. So cashless participation is at a really high level. It makes it possible for employees of public companies to maximize their contribution to their company stock plan without actually having more money come out of their paycheck. So for the first time ever, all of your employees can actually participate in the stock plan and benefit from the growth of the company over time. With cashless participation, on average, employees end up owning between 50 to 150% more stock without having paid anything extra for it. And as you'll see in a second, that really matters from a risk perspective. In a world where volatility is high, it reduces the risk of participation. And cashless participation is really a first of its kind product, because at a really high level, what we're able to do is we make it possible for employees to have more opportunity with less risk, but do it in a shareholder-friendly way. So who benefits in all this? Well, number one, it's the employees. Employees own more stock, and as we know, stock ownership is a key to building wealth over time. Bloomberg ran a story yesterday that looked at the growing wealth gap in America and found that the primary cause of the growing wealth gap is middle and lower middle class Americans don't have access to equity ownership. For generations, equity ownership has been a great way to build wealth, but increasingly people have become priced out of that. So your employees with cashless participation will certainly have access to an opportunity that can benefit them over time. Number two, your company. As we mentioned before, your management team has certain performance goals. Yes, there's alignment of interest that happens with employees, but also in a hard, fast, and quantifiable way. When companies add cashless participation to their stock plan, a lot of the adjusted metrics that are baked into performance awards actually get closer to reach. And lastly, your shareholders. Shareholders like to see growth. They like to see positive returns on capital. When more people participate in the stock plan, the company is able to take in money and reinvest generally at pretty high rates. So it's not only a great source of working capital for the business, but maybe more importantly, delivers a return to shareholders. So we'll walk through each section of this. So let's start with the benefit to eligible participants. So proven results with cashless participation, public company employees on our platform have enjoyed the equivalent of about an 11% annualized raise. That is very powerful. When you think about a world where wage growth is flat, to deliver the equivalent raise of 11% in a way that doesn't cost the company anything, in fact actually brings cash onto the balance sheet, that really makes a difference in the day-to-day lives for your employees, especially when you think about the elements of financial inclusion. People that are on the lower end of the income spectrum, people of color that are generally excluded from some of these plans just as a result, as the data shows, of traditionally making less money. This is a great way to deliver value, but also do it in a way that really drives home results for employees. And it sets them up for long-term success. Cashless participation made it possible for employees of one company to own 139% more stock without additional payroll contributions. The average employee put about $3,700 into the plan and saw almost $14,000 in profit come back on top of that. Those are private equity, venture capital like returns. And what you see is people understand the value. 93% of people joining the employee stock purchase plan, with almost 80% using cashless participation. So as you think about truly broad-based results that are real, that are powerful, cashless participation has delivered. But it does it in a way that reduces risk. So let's talk about a regular employee stock purchase plan. So a regular employee stock purchase plan, employees put money into the plan, they buy stock at generally a 15% discount. Depending on the structure of the plan, sometimes it can actually be a lot higher than that, but we'll stick with the 15% discount for a second. With a regular employee stock purchase plan, people put money into the plan and the stock price goes down more than 15%. Well, they start losing money on their investment because they're a shareholder. But all of a sudden, what happens with cashless participation, especially for folks that are able to afford to contribute the least, is that break-even point dramatically changes. So for employees that can only afford to contribute 1%, 2%, 3% of their income, they would have to see the stock price go down more than 50%, 50%, before they start losing any money on their investment. So what we do, yes, is put employees in a position where they have more opportunity, but we also add, in some ways, insurance to stock ownership for your employees by putting them in a position where the underlying stock price would have to go down considerably more before they even started to lose money on their investment. And I talk about the capital markets opportunity here, but as you think about the stock market generally, this is one of the only places where you'll find increased opportunity with less risk at the same time. And especially as you think about your fiduciary duty to your employees, stock ownership has to be balanced and it has to be done in a way that's risk adjusted, and cashless participation does just that. So now let's flip to the company and the shareholder side of things. So to start with, enhanced financial metrics for the company. In most cases, adjusted EBITDA, adjusted EPS actually increase as a result of cashless participation being added to a stock plan. And it's done in a way that improves your ESG score. When you look at MSCI puts out a wonderful scorecard for ESG, especially around financial inclusion. One of the things that's a metric in the ESG scorecard is, does everyone have access to the same things? And the irony here is that under the tax code, employee stock purchase plans have an equal rights and privileges feature where everyone has to have the same opportunity to participate in the plan. So there's a statutory requirement that everyone have the same opportunity. Finally, cashless participation can make that happen. And as a result, especially as ESG reporting becomes ever more important, your company can actually accumulate more points on the ESG scorecard along the way. From a pay equity perspective, there's been a lot of great research done recently around the disparity in pay across genders, across ethnicities. Cashless participation is an equalizer, making it possible for everyone who's actually eligible for the stock plan to participate really delivers equity for everyone. Because we're talking about stock, truly, we're delivering equity as a result of equity ownership along the way. As we think about return on capital, when people participate in the company's stock plan, that's driving paid-in capital onto the balance sheet of the company. And what that means is that the company is taking in all of this paid-in capital and reinvesting it in the business. Specifically, tech, healthcare, financial services companies with high ROEs, this is a great way to take in capital, reinvest, and actually deliver value for shareholders rather than having money go out the door in really expensive, sometimes hard to measure compensation type plans or structures. There's real quantifiable value to having more people participate in your stock plan for your shareholders. As you think about what that means, why does it matter that a company can boost its ESG score, deliver value for shareholders? What it ultimately comes down to is purpose. There was a great study that we saw a couple weeks ago that polled CFOs of publicly traded companies. And the question was, if you could actually pay your people more money without it impacting your shareholders, would you do it? And most shareholders answered yes. Most CFOs answered yes. And what it shows you is that there's a changing perception where from a corporate responsibility perspective, companies want to do the right thing and make it possible for people to live a comfortable, financially secure life. But there's always been a gap in the how. How do we do it? How do we do it without putting hundreds of millions of dollars out the door? I'm quite proud to say that I think we've taken a step here to be that how for publicly traded companies, to finally make it possible for all the amazing folks out there, like everyone who's tuned in today, that are looking for creative ways to do the right thing and manage that balance between being fiscally responsible, delivering value to shareholders, and also delivering the best compensation possible for your employees. That purpose is something that is really strong and really powerful, and I think has come to light quite clearly here. When you think about what it means from a regulatory perspective, we made history. We secured the first private letter ruling on employee stock purchase plans in 14 years from the IRS that allows publicly traded companies to add cashless participation to their stock plan while retaining qualified status. And that goes back to the financial metrics of cashless participation. One of the really powerful things with employee stock purchase plans when they're qualified under the tax code is companies actually get a write-off for the value delivered to employees. So as you think about what we've done here, starting from the inspiration with my mom, who missed out on $1 million in a little bit more than 10 years because she couldn't participate, building an incredible, powerful product, but doing it in a way that fits within the existing tax code and making history at the same time, I think gets us one step closer to fulfilling the vision that Congress had back in 1964, when we were in a world that looked a lot like it does today, where people were having a hard time paying the bills, but also there were certainly issues of economic justice, financial inclusion, and civil rights issues. What we've done here, and we've played our small part in making history to finally bring this all to life and bring into the modern world something that hasn't changed since 1964 to reflect the realities of today. With that, though, comes the challenge of communicating. Now, there's been a lot of bad news being communicated recently. We like communicating good news. And one of the things that we found is a big pain point for a lot of publicly traded companies, especially with equity plans, is actually educating the workforce globally in a localized, personalized way. So we created Carbon. Carbon is the world's first platform that allows companies to design, build, and launch equity education campaigns of all types in now over 10 languages, 100 countries. So as you think about your communication challenges internally, especially where resources have been cut, you can use powerful communication tools to really help deliver the good news to employees in all of your offices, especially in a world where, for some of you, you may be used to getting on planes and traveling internationally to go do training sessions and things like that. We're just in a new world, and it's important to leverage digital tools along those lines. So as you think about the key elements of our session, let's go through these one by one. Number one, how am I helping my employees financially right now? A lot of companies have done a lot of amazing things. Some of the big companies like Amazon and Walmart have delivered hourly cash raises to employees. That's great. It's amazing. It delivers a ton of value for people who need it. But not every company can do that. So I'd say, as a takeaway from today, think about what your company can do. It might not be cash raises. You might be in a situation where, from a budgeting perspective, you don't have the ability to do that. But what other creative ideas are there? What other proven ways are there to deliver value in a way that's shareholder friendly? It's important, especially right now. Number two, how am I encouraging my employees to stay with our company? There's been a divergence. There have been some companies, and you see it in some of the stuff that's been happening in the stock market. There are some companies that have done really well as a result of how the world has changed during the coronavirus. There are others who are struggling in a world where there's still a constant war for the best and brightest talent. What can be done to help your talented team members stay with your company? Number three, what can you do to help generate working capital for the business? In a world where cost cutting is important, cash flow is also equally as important. So what can you do to help drive working capital of the business? And lastly, how are you thinking about communicating across the board, even beyond equity plans and compensation broadly? How's your team thinking about communicating to your global workforce? So with that, we're going to turn it into a little bit of a conversation here, and we'll answer some questions. For those of you who we don't have a chance to get to your questions, please feel free to reach out to us at issuers@carveredison.com. We're always around, always available. And Amy, let's open this up here to a conversation, and we can take some questions.
Great, and thank you so much, Aaron. It's a very informative session. I learned a lot from you about your company and how your model basically helped you, as you said, reach the alignment between both compensation increase for individuals and also helping to improve management performance. I really like how you connected to ESG and pay equity and some issues that are really important in the world right now. So we do got a lot of questions from audience. I think they are good questions, and I think some of the audience might be appreciating a little bit more details about the process of your product. For example, there's one question about, can you explain a bit more about cashless? What is the process here?
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like that question is from Linda. Linda, thank you for that question. It's a great one. So let me walk everyone through the process here. So we'll start with the way a regular employee stock purchase plan works today. So regular employee stock purchase plan, an employee signs up, they select how much of their income they want to contribute to the plan. And generally every 2 weeks for 6 months, that money comes out of their paycheck. And at the end of the 6-month period, that money goes towards buying stock at a discount. Cashless participation fits right within the existing framework of how ESPPs work today. So much like a regular ESPP, employees sign up through their share plan administrator, the company's existing share plan administrator. They select how much of their income they want to contribute to the plan. That money gets taken out of their paycheck every 2 weeks for 6 months. And then about a week or so before the end of that 6-month period, what we do, and our technology is plugged in to the share plan administrators, is we actually send the company the difference between whatever the employees have contributed and whatever either the ceiling on the plan is or whatever the share utilization limit is on the plan, to make sure that employee contributions are maximized. So let's take, for the sake of example here, an employee that could contribute up to 15% of their income to the plan, but they can only afford to contribute 5%. So what we'll do is we'll send the company that the 10% difference between the maximum, the 15%, and whatever the employee could contribute. So we're sending that 10% in cash to the company across all of the eligible employees who've elected to participate. And then just like a regular purchase, the contributions plus the cashless participation amount are put together. They go towards buying stock at a discount. We get sent enough shares by the transfer agent to repay the cashless participation amount, and the remaining shares are the net shares, which generally are between 50 to 150% more than an employee could ever own on their own, get deposited in their brokerage account with your share plan administrator. So cashless participation fits right into your existing process and framework for running your plan. And a frequent question is, well, is it really cashless? Could someone just not contribute anything at all to their company stock plan and use cashless participation? The answer is no. Employees have to contribute at least 1% to their plan, or whatever the minimum under your designated plan is. Linda, back to your question, from a process perspective, cashless participation fits right in to your existing process for running your stock plan. It doesn't require any infrastructure changes. It really just is an enhancement to your current stock plan today that you can roll out without switching or changing much of anything.
Thank you for Aaron for addressing Linda's question. There's another question from Terry. So as you mentioned during your presentation, there are a lot of benefits of doing this. So it seems like a win-win universally. So are there any real challenges administratively, or are there anything that the companies should be mindful about?
Yeah, I think and Terry, thanks for the question. You're right. I mean, it is a pretty universal win-win. The challenges are really the same challenges that administrators deal with today when they're processing their purchase, but there are no extra challenges that come along with cashless participation. But like anything, especially for those in the audience that run plans internally, it's things like, well, when an employee elects to have 5% taken out of their paycheck, if they're an hourly worker, how do we true up those numbers if their wage is fluctuating every week? So these are challenges that exist with or without cashless participation. But no, as a result of cashless participation, we've been pretty methodical about making sure that we're not introducing any new workflow requirements into the process. And it's one of the reasons why we're actually able to use your current process with your current share plan administrator and any plan type to add cashless participation to the plan.
Thanks, Aaron. And on top of that, I know that you're not able to give tax advice, but there's a question about sort of implications of tax policy on this. Are you able to sort of elaborate on this a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, so ESPPs have been written into the tax code as tax qualified plans for the better part of now over 60 years or so. So ESPPs are one of the reasons why companies have them is because they are tax advantaged plans. So no, the adoption of ESPPs, and you can see it, there's some great industry studies out there, are picking up because of some of the important tax benefits of offering these plans to both the company and the employee. The employees under qualified plans aren't taxed on the value created until the time of disposition. And if they hold shares long enough, they get the benefit of capital gain. So these are tax advantage plans. And one of the reasons why companies like them so much and we're seeing increased adoption is just because of the favorable tax policies.
Great, thanks.
Tom, I want to make sure we get to your question. So Tom's question is, what is the profile of a company where this would work well? What happens if it's implemented and the company begins to struggle due to business cycle, marketplace changes, et cetera? Thanks for the question, Tom. It's a really good one. So what's the profile of the company, of a type of company where this would work well? The answer is it's sometimes really different. So I'll give you a couple of different profiles to give you a sense of sort of the ranges. One scenario is you have a lot of hourly retail manufacturing employees that just quite literally aren't able to participate because of the cost element of the plan. So that profile company maybe looks something like they have 15% participation, large hourly demographic workforce, pretty disparate. That's one end of the range. The other end of the range, and we're seeing this a lot now, are companies whose stock price has done so well that they're getting priced out of participating in their company stock plan. So there are plenty of companies out there that have 70, 80, sometimes 90% participation, but the buying power that employees have under the stock plan just has been stretched thin as a result of the increasing share price. So every company is a little bit different. And in most cases, there's sort of a range of demographics and outcomes for companies depending on sort of what the current state of their plan is and what the workforce looks like. If you're a company that has 100% participation in your plan and employees are already contributing the maximum possible to their plan, you're an amazing company. We would love to speak with you and learn your secrets at some point. But the reality is, nationally, participation in these plans is only about 30%. So across the board, it really depends. On the market cycle question, what happens if this is implemented and the company begins to struggle? So the first place you see that is share utilization, because if the company starts struggling, stock price is going down. Now, from the employee's perspective, most plans have either a look back feature where employees can buy the stock at the lower of the starting or the ending price in a 6-month period, or the discount is just applied at the ending price. So no matter what happens, the employee is always buying at a discount. But where market cycles matter is when stock prices start to go down. You want to be mindful of share utilization, especially if you have a certain number of authorized shares under the plan by the shareholders or the board. You want to be mindful of how long that lasts. So one of the things that we always do for cashless participation is we actually back into whatever your internal share utilization forecast is, and we help you model that range of outcomes. So one of the things that's really important is if your finance or your treasury team says, Tom, we need these shares to last us 4 or 5 years, our team works with you and your share plan administrator to make sure that those are hard and fast limits, so that if in the event stock price really starts falling precipitously, you're not blowing through a share limit. Again, this is all about balance and measured delivery of economics. Share utilization is an important consideration, so it's why it's important to keep an eye on that. So let's see, what other question?
Oh yeah,
go ahead, Amy.
Just on top of Tom's question, a specific question regarding like if some organizations are currently struggling and they have to reduce their team's salary, so could cashless participation still be an option for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely, and we saw it in some of the results that we showed earlier. And I think there's a question actually around whether those were annual figures, whether they were 5-year estimates or over a lifetime. So the equivalent raise figure, and we can go back here. So the equivalent raise figure of 11%, this is an annual number. These results were achieved in 6 months. So these are not forecasted estimates with an implied growth rate or something like that. These are real results, real numbers. In this case, the 11% equivalent raise was over a rolling 12-month period, and these results were from a 6-month purchase. So yeah, it's quite powerful. And from a salary perspective, absolutely. I mean, Tesla's a really good example of this. And there was a little bit made of it in the news, where because everyone has equity at Tesla, Tesla had made some salary cuts, but actually those were more than offset by the result of the equity provided to people along the way. So absolutely true.
Great, thanks, Aaron. And there's a very interesting question about how you develop the system. And did you use design thinking or other methods in how you develop your system?
Yeah, so to start, a lot of coffee, but yeah, so design thinking, as I was building cashless participation, since it's obviously grown, was at sort of the forefront. I mean, who are we solving for? What problem are we solving? And what do people want in a product? And in this case, it's a little bit unique because we're solving for multiple interest groups. On the one hand, we have employees who want a really simple, really easy to use experience They don't want to have to worry about doing anything extra, logging into a brokerage account, sending someone money. They just want it to be really simple. We see it with some of the work we've done already. Cashless participation, people log in their brokerage account, they have more shares that they own completely outright sitting in their brokerage account. So that was one part of it. And then it was the issuer side. So how do we make sure we're fitting into the existing workflow and processes of publicly traded companies who run these plans, regardless of what share plan administrator they're using, how many countries they're in, what their payroll cycles are. So yeah, absolutely, that was an important element of consideration.
Great, thanks, Aaron. I think we are at the end of our webcast, and I'm sure that if our audience or participants have additional questions, they can reach out to you and your team. If you have maybe the email address to share with our audience.
Yeah, again, issuers@carveredison.com for anyone with further questions, or for those of you that are in a situation where you need some help thinking through some of these challenges. We're here to help. Thank you again, Amy, for the opportunity. This has been great, and hopefully for everyone that tuned in today, this has been insightful and educational.
Thanks again, Aaron, for joining us. It's definitely a brilliant session. We learned a lot from your insights and recommendations. So before I close today's webcast, I'd like to share some resources and some upcoming events of the Conference Board that you may be interested in. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, we actually also have a couple upcoming webcasts to share with you. For example, the Coaching the Future Digital Leader, which will be October 21st. Everyone's asking about how to safely return to the workplace, so we have a webcast on the 26th about some strategies to support a safer return to the work site. And we also did a survey about what organizations are currently doing and what they are planning to do in response to COVID-19. So at the end of the month, we have another webcast called From Immediate Responses to Planning for the Reimagined Workplace. So if you're interested, you can click the links in the downloadable presentation to register for those programs. And also you can visit our website to see the full list of upcoming virtual events. And these are the Human Capital Insights, which is a new podcast series brought to you by the Conference Board's Human Capital Center. So these are podcasts on various HR topics, and you can visit our website to register for those activities. And finally, if you are interested in collaborating with us with the Conference Board to produce another great program like you just saw today, please reach out to us. And thanks again for joining us today. Have a nice weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.